Today we're going to present you with some bad math and some great news. Jesus, 100% God, 100% man. This is Burnt on Religion.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the podcast for those who have been burnt, who are currently being burnt, and those who are avoiding being burnt. This is Burnt on Religion. I'm Ashton, and these are the action figures I made while working with those merry little elves, getting ready for Christmas.
Santa?
This is Josh, and this is Josh.
Thank you, Ashton.
You're welcome.
That was.
At least
know
I
whether
called
to
you
thank
an
him or not.
action figure versus a doll. I could have said a doll.
That would not have worked.
Makes me feel pretty.
That would have been take two.
I don't want to feel pretty.
Sometimes I just like to be told that I'm pretty.
Oh.
Makes me feel better.
Okay, we're gonna switch our episode topic today. to
Merry
deal
Christmas,
with
everybody.
Josh's issues.
Christmas.
Yeah, today it's a kind of a special Christmas episode today, where we're going to talk about a Christmas topic, but it's not Santa Claus. It's not the candy cane story.
Oh.
We're not
Yeah,
going to go
again.
with candy cane story.
Have you guys been berated by that yet? Again, I've had it twice now
yet.
leaving the grocery store.
This year?
Yeah,
Wow.
already.
I have not yet.
Yeah, just church people hand me. You want the story of the candy cane? And it's always that one where you are like, lady, I know this story like the back of my hand.
Right.
I was in your spot, but
Right.
yeah,
Been in
no,
church your
twice
whole life.
already.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
Wow.
been crazy.
Where are you going? Because I've
me
not
Just the price chopper. I got to avoid the price chopper.
All right,
no more
gotcha.
price
Not
chopper.
going there.
No.
Okay.
Don't need the Christmas candy cane story.
Yeah.
Today we're actually going with a topic that's a lot deeper than the candy cane. A lot deeper than Santa Claus. A lot deeper than a lot of your Christmas angles. We're going with Jesus, 100% God, 100% man, which is horrible math, by the way.
I'm not
No,
figuring
again,
that one at all.
I was telling y'all beforehand, and I just think it's funny that in the last couple weeks we have opened and gone after certain topics that when you say it out loud, it sounds counterintuitive. It sounds a little ridiculous. Again, not good math. And it's like, okay, now that we've done all that and we've gone after them and we've poked them with holes and we've done our episodes, now we're on the back foot because now we got to now defend something that when you say it out loud,
That sounds horrible.
it doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense.
No, Jesus, 100% God, 100% man. You can't have 200% of anything.
That's true.
So, but Jesus, however, was he 200% of anything? No, he was 100% God, 100% man, and now we have a math problem.
Yeah.
We've got to sort through. But also, what's the purpose? Why did God become man? I mean, that's the whole Christmas story.
Yeah.
He was born of a virgin. He was born as us. Galatians says he was born under the law to redeem those that were under the law. So God did become man. He is human.
Yep.
That's an element of God that never happened before that. He
Okay.
was never human before that. So what's the purpose of becoming man? I mean, he's God. Couldn't he just come up with something?
Yeah, he's got a plan from the foundation of the earth, and then here's the plan. Now we have to try to explain the plan
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense by opening it with a statement that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
So
We
Makes
are
sense.
strategic.
Makes
Ashton
sense.
will now wax philosophical and theological,
Okay.
and will explain in detail for the next 2.5 hours
Okay.
how this works.
And,
Ashton,
Okay.
and can you get it in that 45-minute frame, please?
Okay.
Wax eloquently.
Yes. Waxing on. So there was this void, right? In space.
good start.
And so this void became less of a void, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's the Cliff Notes.
The Reader's Digest
Yes.
version.
I mean, that was nowhere near 2.5 hours,
All right.
but we'll get
Well,
into
yeah.
it, I guess.
I guess we'll throw some filler in there.
Yeah. So,
All right.
You
now
guys
we gotta
got
try
this.
now we have to try to break that down,
Right.
theologically.
You got to build that up.
So,
Just
so,
break
yeah.
it down.
So, I mean, if you're looking at it, okay, it obviously sounds, in a way, if you say it as a statement, especially for those who did not grow up with this and an understanding of this and how it fits into the plan. And that was the thing, is even growing up, you hear it and this is what it is, okay? And you just go, got it. because you understand the end, and if you're around it all the time, you know how it kind of pans out. But rarely ever, and I don't know if it was different for you all, did you hear like it broke down, that he was this way or that he was this way. It was in my circles anyway, and it seems like a lot of traditional religious circles, this is God. This was the plan to save your dirty, rotten sinner selves.
Yes.
That he had to, and it's not even, I don't think we put the focus in traditional backgrounds. I don't think we put the focus on his life outside of his sinless absolute thing. And he was absolutely sinless.
Yes.
He was perfect because he is 100% God.
Right.
But we don't dwell on his relation to us. We dwell on our relation to trying to get to him.
Right.
And we focus more on what he did and how we can use it against people usually. It seems it's used against people to try to, that we don't talk about the relatable with him.
His humanity.
We don't talk about the humanity.
Right.
We talk about, he is this and you are here, you need to get here.
Right.
And so we can look at his life and be like, okay, we don't do the comparative with his humanity.
Right.
We don't do that because we want to emphasize his perfection.
Right.
And how we're not perfect.
It's more honorable to say he's God than it is to say he's man.
Yes.
So we focus on that.
And there's credibility to that because, like I said, absolutely, he's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you don't do God and Jesus in this case justice if you don't explain the how or the why in this
Yes.
scenario. If you just go with it and understand that people growing up with it kind of understand that, yeah, that's what he is.
Right.
All right. Now the how and the why, it's just a better understanding. It's part of that relationship,
Yes.
like we talk so much about here. That part of it lets us see him in a light that is, yes, the light of perfection, but in a light of relatability, like we talk about. And I think the point of this episode and this topic is, let's do God and Jesus justice in this regard.
Yeah.
And our eyes, for those who have learned it and are talking about it again, and for those who may not have had this lesson or thought about these things, that's what we want from this episode,
Right.
is to show those people, this is the justice we want to do. This is the relatable aspect of him, because this is how amazing he is.
Right.
Perfect? Yes. And we're going to have to touch on that because
Sure.
it is fundamentally key, his perfection and his 100% being God.
Right.
But also a God who understands
Yes.
and relates to us.
So I think it's important to say there was no way for us to get to God. And you can look at all the religions in the world. Everybody's trying to get to God. That's I guess that's the objective to religion, is to reach that final point with God, whatever that may be. But in Christianity, we realized there was no way for us to get to God, and that's why he came to us. But the fact that he came to us is an element that we don't touch on a whole lot. The humanity side of it. As you just said, Josh, a lot of times we focus on, we want to look at the God side because that's perfect.
Yeah, he is divine. That's what we're going with.
He is. We want to look at him as God, and we don't want to look at him as man, because if we look at him as man, it's almost a slap in the face to him.
Yeah. Can you tie him to our sin? Can you tie him to humanity and
Right.
tarnish him? Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to insult God by saying he was a man, but God thought it was important to become man.
Yeah.
Now, what we want to touch on here and what we want to really emphasize for Christmas, and by the way, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
This is a good gift to hand out there to try to bring some clarity to the 100% God, 100% man thing. And by the way, if you're watching, you can see that we went through the effort today to deck out the studio. Look at this.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at our Charlie Brown Christmas tree version.
Time is here.
Thank you.
I won't go any
Josh.
further.
I was willing to sit through that.
I don't have a high enough octave to reach
Right.
the
You did
Peanuts
well, though.
sound. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah,
Thank you.
you did well. Thank
now,
you
if I
for
could
that.
get Snoopy and Woodstock to walk through,
Yeah.
it'd be a good day.
Yes. So yeah, we went through the effort, and by the way, it was these three guys. All the ladies looking at this might go, "Oh wow, they could have done so much better," and you're probably right.
You're absolutely
But this
right.
is the effort of three guys that thought, "Hey, it's Christmas. Let's go ahead and do this."
Yeah.
But on top of that, we want to give you another gift, and that is to explain the humanity of Jesus Christ, because that is left out a lot of times. What's the point?
Yep.
Why did he do it? Is it just so he could die? Because, I mean, in that case, why don't you just put Jesus as a man walking the streets at 33 and a half years
Yeah.
old? You know, why be born of a virgin? Why grow up for 33 and a half years? Why not just, hey, there's a human there. That's the Messiah. Kill him. He takes care of our sins. Why start as a baby?
Yeah.
That's a rough start for all of us. I mean, we are so dependent.
Yep. Okay. So let's break it back into a math setup, okay? And I'll ask this question for y'all. Okay. So if Jesus is 100% God and 100% man, okay?
Yep.
So the obvious sum of our equation here is Jesus. So let's build him. We got to build Jesus.
Okay.
So we have to know the components and the parts that go into him being 100% God and 100%
Okay.
man.
All right.
So let's start with, let's call it, though it isn't, let's call it the easy one here. If I ask you to, and I'm going to ask you to right now. Let's ask you the
Coming after
question.
us, Ashton.
Oh man. Okay.
Get ready, Ashton.
Ready. Ready.
And there'll be, I'm sure there's an episode we could do just on this alone. So let's go with the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
Like Ashton
I'm
so
great
loves
at that,
because
yes.
he shortened our
Waxed
2.5 hours down.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So let's build. We need 100% of God.
Okay.
Let's build God. Who is God?
Describe him?
Describe God.
Okay.
But seriously, both of you.
Okay,
describe God.
I'm going good. I'm going first. He's good.
Yep.
And he can't be anything other than good. That was really well said. I'm proud of myself. Ashton, go.
You just
This is a waxing eloquent episode today.
yeah. I like the response. I like it. I mean, to describe something that is perfect.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I know that's kind of open to interpretation as well, but being good, loving, caring, nurturing, and I know again those are also open into interpretation because love in itself can be a lot of different things.
And I'll be, not to cut you off, but keep going. I'm glad you're saying this because it's going to build up for a question I have later in the episode.
Right.
to go.
Yes,
What
Got
are you
it.
doing?
Take note
Ashton?
of this. Take
Yes.
note of all of this.
Right.
it is a hard thing to wrap your head around how to describe something that truly puts so much effort into creation and us and Cliff Notes is not really working right now because it's a hard thing to
It is
describe.
It is because he's outside of our understanding, of course, because he's outside of time and space and all that because he created those things. But he is all knowing, and we have to give him that. He
Yep.
is all knowing, and he knows what's best for us because he created us.
Yes.
I know if I create something, I know the elements that go into that. I know what I created because I'm the creator of that thing.
Yep.
So he is all knowing. He knows what's best for us. He is good. He's 100% righteous. He can do no wrong.
Yep.
He can do no wrong. Which for me, on the other hand, I can do wrong.
Yep.
I mean, I've been made righteous because of salvation, which of course is another episode. But there's times when I don't behave righteously, and
Yep.
he always does
Yeah.
because he's God. It almost seems like he's outside of our. I mean, he's outside of our league.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
It's God and versus us. I mean, we lose.
Yep. But let's go with some simple understanding here, okay? Got some some simple things that were in the notes for this episode. So let's talk about them, okay? And just yes or no questions, rapid fire to both of y'all. Here we go. You just said it. Is he all knowing?
Yes.
Okay. So he's all knowing. Does he have any weaknesses, any faults, any flaws?
No.
No.
He's perfect.
So he is perfect.
Yep.
Does he grow weary in everything he does? Is God like, okay, time off, time out, need a break? Let's, or does he suffer in terms of like, oh, this has just been a rough day
Where he
in
needs-
heaven.
he's-
Give me a break.
I mean,
Let's
there
stop.
was that one day he did rest. Yes.
He did rest, but
Yes, right.
Would you say
Boom, got
that
it.
he is weak or suffers?
No, he's our strength.
Okay.
He's our rock.
Okay.
All of that.
And then can he sin? Can he even be tempted to sin?
God?
Yes.
He's out. He doesn't have a sin nature at all.
All right. So now let's hit it with this question. Okay, so we can establish God. God is perfect.
Yes.
In all things and always. He is love. He is good. He is all knowing. He's all present. I mean, that is almost the simple understanding, and why I call it easy one. If you say God, most people have a general understanding. It's a higher power that is
Right.
omni everything.
Right.
Now, we can think about those questions: perfect, tempted, weak and suffer, all knowing. So how? And he created us, so he gets us.
Yes, he understands.
How?
How does he understand?
How does he understand? If he gets us, does he like really get us? Because I can bake a cake, but I can't say that I know what it's like to be a cake. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm in
You make
in
a
control
terrible
of
cake.
what that cake is.
Right. Okay.
But don't eat me.
Okay. All
I
right.
will taste terrible, and I'm not near as fun.
Okay.
To have at birthday parties.
Right. Right. So I think what you just brought up, and by the way, Josh did this. Don't judge, and it's that Josh, not this Josh.
That Josh
So
did it.
don't judge me and Ashton. But what you just said in a nutshell, and I'm just going to drop this out there and then I'm going to leave it and you can suffer with this.
Okay.
Josh just said God is completely unrelatable.
Yeah.
That's what you just
I
said.
have. Let's just dig.
Right.
Let's just dig up.
Dig your way out, yeah.
And then we'll work our way
Lightning
through.
bolts.
I think I know the end of this episode, but it may turn on me
It
in a
may.
heartbeat, and we'll be in trouble.
may
But let's,
result in
okay.
missing a
So
Josh.
let's think about this. All knowing, I can assure you,
Right.
I don't know everything. Though I, if you ask anyone close to me, act like it, I do not. I got some weaknesses. I got
Sure.
some flaws.
Yeah.
Grammar, other things, and that's a big list.
Right.
Do I agree with you? I'm tired now.
Yes.
It's morning the day we're recording this, and
Yes.
and I've had a large coffee, which should help me get to my afternoon nap. But yeah, I grow tired. I suffer. There's bad days. I have bad days, and can I be tempted? You bet I can.
Yes.
Okay. So if he's unrelatable, God and
Right.
everything that he is, and this is me, we are not the same
No.
at all.
We are not.
So unrelatable
Yep.
in aspects. Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
He is unrelatable.
He is unrelatable. And at the same time, he completely understands us, and he is the one that we can go to. We can trust him completely we can understand that he truly understands. But how?
Yep.
How can we say, like you said, which was a genius illustration and yet weird? You create
I'm
a
good at
cake.
those.
Yeah. You create a cake, but you don't know what it's like to be a cake. I think that's a good illustration of God created us, but he's not us.
Yeah.
So how do you say, yeah, God, I think you really get me. Why? Because you had a bad day today, God? You know what it's like to be exhausted and have the bill collector come after you? You know what it's like to be out of resources? The God of all creation is out of resources
Yep.
and struggling right now. How can you say God is relatable? I mean, sure, he created us, and we know he knows us.
Yes.
But how do you explain that?
Yep.
How do you explain that he knows us? And
Okay.
I think that's where we take this turn.
Yeah. Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Throw a pin in it. So there's part one. We have the first aspect of our equation, but we have the answer, Jesus.
Yes. Sure.
But we have the first aspect of God. So let's pose what I will say is the more difficult question in a way, because this one is not God. So it is a little more variable. What does it mean to be man? What's it mean to be human?
It's rough.
It can be, yeah.
I've been human my whole life. I'm still trying to figure this out.
So seriously, question I'll pose to y'all. We have God. We have God. Let's set that one aside. So let's break it down this way. We'll make it a little easier.
That would be great.
In your experience, because if I say that line before this question, it makes it a little more
Personal.
dialed in.
Yeah.
Because if I can, and I'll ask you, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a human from your perspective? What does it mean to be for you two? What's it mean to be 100% man? Because we us three right here, are 100% human, 100%
Yes.
man at birth.
Yes.
So, what does it mean?
I would
be-
say it means I don't know everything that's coming, even though God is all knowing. I would say for me, I am not all knowing. I'm completely dependent. Even though I'm able to do things on my own, I can never say I really don't need God anymore. I really do need God. I need to, and I've got to learn so many things because I'm not all knowing. I have to learn. I've worked on my house. I didn't know how to work on a house. YouTube is, by the way,
That's a
great thing.
YouTube mechanic.
Yes,
Carpenter, yeah.
I'm a good YouTube mechanic. But I have to learn those things. I don't know those things. God spoke everything into existence. He's really good at this stuff. But I have to learn and I have to grow. And there's sometimes even behaviors I have to learn what's the best approach because I don't know that right offhand.
Yep.
But I am dependent. I think humanity, all of us are dependent, even though some of us try to prove that we're not.
Yep.
We're independent. But I think we're all dependent. So that's one aspect of humanity.
Yep. Ashton.
Oh boy.
Oh, here we go.
yeah.
On the bright
All right.
side, it's your perspective of
Yeah.
it. In your life,
Yeah.
what does it mean to be Ashton? There's another episode right there.
Oh, yes.
That's
yes.
a long-
That's a different episode from the first episode. That's a long episode.
I mean, it's multi-dimensional. You're gonna there's a lot of ups and downs. I mean, there's great things that I have learned and experienced. There's a lot of good things I want to experience. There's a lot of tragedy. There's
Yeah.
a
Yep.
lot of mistakes. And you're on that constant learning, and it
Yep.
even now, there's things I know I struggle with and I need to work on, and things to teach my kids. I mean, there's so much to it, and it's great and terrifying at the same time.
It can be hard, yeah.
Every minute, you never know what life's going to throw at you, and you got to be equipped to be able to handle things on a drop of a hat. And it is a great roller coaster to be on because
Right,
it's unpredictable, and yet you know what you've been through. But it's the interactions you have with people and even things in nature, and it's great, again terrifying, and it's so unique because everybody goes through similar but yet different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you can't really
Experiences.
you can't say what it's like to be a man, because somebody like your life is yet still different but yet similar.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
that's the cliff notes.
I think experiences, that's one thing for me. Experiences is part of humanity because
Yeah.
if you're all knowing, what are experiences like? And I can't
Right.
answer that
Yeah.
You've
question. There's-
experienced everything.
if you're all knowing, how do you define experience for
Yeah.
God? And I really can't say I'm going to explain this in theological terms or anything because I don't know. I've never been God.
Yep.
So I can't say I know what it's like to be God. Check this out. There's no way I can
Yeah.
do that. But I think experiences is a good way to define humanity. Also, I think that was a good answer.
So,
Two today.
and I think it's good, and I would agree. I think though we all have shared experiences, we all have vastly different experiences. Like you said, Ashton, sometimes you get low lows, and there's times where you have high highs.
Yep.
And you said, and I would agree. In looking back on my life and my experiences, and Josh, I don't know if you're in the same, and feel free to just chime in if you are. I've said it's a good roller coaster ride in my life. I enjoy where I'm at. I've enjoyed, there's been low lows.
Yep.
And just simple lows, but my life has got me to where I am, and I'm happy, and I'm serving, and it's all those things that I love it. But then there's also people out there, maybe listening or whatnot, who have not enjoyed that ride.
Right.
And so, the biggest thing I want to do in this is thank you all for what you've just said, because you have helped strengthen my argument that he is unrelatable.
Yes, you're welcome.
That he.
Thank you for listening, folks.
Because everything you two just said, and then the little bit that I said, but everything that you two just said, That is not. Again, you just said that. What is God? How do you define experience with God if He's all knowing?
Yeah.
I'm sure God doesn't have low lows. I'm sure God's pretty hitting on all cylinders at all times.
Right.
So again, thank you all for making it unrelatable. So there you go. You got 100% God, 100% man.
Yep.
You got Jesus. Boom.
Yep.
So thank you for seeing us this week. No, I can't. You can't. And the thing is
Can't end there.
Mrs. Hopkins, my third grade teacher, would be so mad at me. And it's this thing that I think of right now. If in math I didn't show my work. And
That's right. That's right.
I think we have our numbers and we have our answer. We know both of them, but there's equations within the equation.
Right.
So, like we do in every episode, we're going to go back to Scripture in context at the beginning.
Let's bring it in.
So, if we have God, the Bible, there's a lot of ways to break down that God is 100% God, and it's basically the entire Bible.
Yeah.
That's pretty easy.
That's a lot of
Like I said,
verses.
that's why I'll call it the easy part.
Okay.
Right.
So let's go with that one. But now we got to get to man and how these two cooperate into the single entity that is Jesus.
Right.
So let's go back to Scripture. Let's start there and make and show our work and show how we got to this answer.
Right.
And why it works and why we believe it.
So let's put Jesus in humanity.
Yep.
Which, by the way, Jesus is 100% God. God decided to place Himself in the human experience.
Yes.
And that is an incredible gift that people don't zone in on.
Yes.
They don't look at this and say, "Wow, what a gift! God becoming man." We think of God as God, and we see as Jesus as the perfect God man.
Yeah.
But we don't ever say, "What if he's 100% man?" Because we even in our own heads we say, "Yeah, Jesus is 100% God." And then what do we call him? God man. Well, just call him man for a second.
Yeah.
No, we can't do that. It almost feels insulting.
Yeah. Makes me sound like a Saturday morning cartoon.
That's right. He-Man. Yeah, right. Like a demigod. And he's not. He's 100% God, and yet he is 100% man.
Yep.
So God places himself, God the Son, places himself in the human experience, which means all those things that we just described about being a human, he hits that on all
about
cylinders.
to shoot my argument down here.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, and I think it's good because
I think
we
we
almost
should.
burned, we almost crashed and burned on our episode there. So here's a verse. I just want to throw this one out because it provokes thought.
Yep.
Luke 2:52. It says, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men." Jesus. Now remember, we always say he's 100% God, right? And he is.
Yep.
When does God have to increase in wisdom? You know, that all-knowing, never does anything wrong God. When does God increase in wisdom? Because Luke 2:52 says Jesus increased in wisdom and stature.
Yeah.
So
I don't think God's, I don't know if God's short. He may be short, but he may have to grow some. But I don't think of God as having to grow.
But when you think of growing in stature, you think of the toddler that's learning how to walk, and you think of those teenage years where your body, your head might be this big and your feet that long, and then your feet are this long and your head's this big, and just the proportions are wrong.
Yep.
Jesus grew in stature too.
Okay.
So he's growing in stature, but then you got that he's growing in wisdom, and I'm sorry, it's hard to put that in a God scenario.
Yeah. But again, shooting holes in my argument, I could put myself in that scenario. I remember, hand on the burner hot and will hurt.
Yes,
Don't touch it.
every time.
And if you touch it once, wisdom says you don't touch it again. So I can say, yes, I can relate to that.
Right.
I can relate to having to grow in wisdom and stature.
And
But,
in those teenage years when we think we have it all together,
yeah, there's a lot of wisdom.
There's a lot of wisdom to be learned in those years, and that's not to put down any teenager. By the way, all three of us were there too, so we're not trying. We want to be.
About.
Ashton's still there, so so we're not trying to be unrelatable with the teens, but a lot of times we think we've got this figured out, where we might have only been on the planet for 14, 15, 16 years, and we think we've got life figured out, and then we turn into the 20s to 30s, and we're like, oh my goodness, I'm running out of wisdom, I'm running out of knowledge, and actually we're gaining it. So Jesus would learn that, hey, mom and dad, actually, there's wisdom in listening to them.
Yep.
There's wisdom in learning. He grew in wisdom.
Yeah.
But to think God grew in wisdom is hard to do.
Yep.
And he was 100% God. But he's 100% man, which means he needs to grow in stature and he
Yep.
needs to grow in wisdom. And we cannot separate those two things, even though in our minds we do.
Yep.
We can't separate them.
And I think it leads into, another verse that's there and that we're thinking of, and it's this one. You got to pull some things apart, and and this is where context is key.
Yes.
And understanding things is we're going to have to pull things apart here, because we think of just this word, or we think of this,
All right.
and we have to separate it and understand and relate to it in a human aspect. But we think of God as perfect because he is,
Right.
and Jesus as perfect because he is.
Yes.
And so then we get verses like this, which I've heard out of context many, many times.
Okay.
Because it's this. Well, you know what? Actually, not even that I heard it out of context. It's just never talked about, because it's just
Okay.
let's just gloss over it. It's not out of context. It's just glossed over,
Yeah.
because it says this in Hebrews 5:8. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered.
Right.
So we have to then get into obedience a little bit and
Yeah.
understand the learning, and it kind of goes with the wisdom topic there. But you have to separate, perfection and disobedience, and kind of break it down to
Okay.
get the context
Right.
of it right. So let's get the context right. But you never hear anybody talking about Jesus growing in, or God as Jesus growing in obedience, learning obedience.
Right.
If he's all knowing and perfect.
How do you do that?
He has got that down pat.
Right.
So how do we get into that one?
Well, let's clean up the first misconception that people will run to
Yeah.
immediately. If you're learning obedience, then you must already be in disobedience.
Yeah.
And that is not.
No.
Jesus was never disobedient.
Yep.
To learn in obedience, though, let's say I'm building something again. I'm a YouTube mechanic,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this. I'm working on the car, whatever. And somebody says, "By the way, if you do that, it's going to be a problem. This is how we do it instead. So do this from now on." Now, I didn't disobey in the first place, but I'm learning obedience. I'm
Yeah.
learning to trust that person. Doesn't mean I'm sinning or disobeying in the first place, but I'm learning in obedience. And the verse says he learned obedience by the things he suffered. So let's say he did touch the burner,
Yeah.
or he's getting ready to touch the burner, and Joseph comes up and says, "Well, what in the world is a burner?" That's a bad that's
it's
a
like
bad
more like
illustration.
campfire.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't
campfire.
touch
Let's
the
go to
fire.
don't touch fire. So Joseph says, "Hey, don't get too close to the fire; it'll burn you." Why didn't an all-knowing God already know that? Because he placed himself in human form.
Yep.
And he hadn't learned that yet. It's mind-blowing, but he hasn't learned that yet. So Joseph says, "Hey, don't do that," and he learns through his suffering obedience.
Yep.
That doesn't mean he ever sinned. It just means he's learning this
Yeah.
obedience aspect.
Yep. You can obey without being in the wrong at the time. And a lot of times
right.
like that, like a parent or different things, it's just to prevent harm. It's to prevent suffering
Right.
and those things, because it says he suffered right there.
Yeah.
So he understands. You guys talked about the low lows, the suffering.
Yeah, he
and
gets it.
We did those in the questions I asked earlier. It just says right there, he suffered. Okay, so there's another hit to the argument that he is unrelatable.
He's
Because
completely relatable.
One of the questions, it even goes verbatim, word for word. He went through that.
Right. Yeah.
So
he gets it.
I am now left with a weaker argument, which I'm happy with. I
Right.
promise.
Right.
I can be wrong sometimes, but
He's been wrong twice in his life so far.
yep, it may stack. We don't know yet,
Right.
but we'll figure it out as we go. And I think that's a big part of it. Is we see him in a light of relatability, and especially as we get into it again. So let's look at another one, Philippians 2:8.
Okay.
And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Here's
yeah.
obedience again
Yes.
coming up.
And it says he became obedient. And I think the key on that is, and I think we really got to focus, is that he humbled himself and became obedient.
Yep.
I think a lot of times the reason why we're not obedient is because we don't humble ourselves.
Yeah.
But he
Because I've only been wrong twice. I get it.
right, because you've only been wrong twice, yeah. And one of those was you were completely mistaken, I
Yeah,
hear.
absolutely.
Yeah. So Jesus learned obedience, and he became obedient by humbling himself.
Yep.
So what does that mean? He was proud in the first place? No. That just means he took the heart of the servant.
Yep.
Instead, it doesn't mean he was in the wrong or in a sinful place and he needed to humble himself. No, he just naturally humbled himself because he knew, I have to be the servant and I'm not the one that's all knowing. And again, mind blowing is Jesus all knowing. You know, he is all God, but he was not all knowing. And I know that's going to ruffle some feathers because people are like, oh no, you just took God, the Godhead, took the Godhood out of Jesus. No, God decided to become, was that the verse you just read?
That's it.
It says a man,
Yep.
he became the form of a servant is what he did.
Yep.
So a servant follows the master. Well, how do you follow the master when you are the master?
Yep.
You know, so he humbles himself and he puts it. There were limitations on Jesus. Otherwise, he would not be learning obedience. He would not be growing in stature. He was limited, and it's hard to put him in that scenario.
But and this is just an add-on here, and we talk about it when I said it earlier in the episode. The reason you have to touch on this, and the reason it's so important, and why it is a good Christmas episode, and it is a good gift, and why I said truly you don't do him justice if you don't talk about this.
Right?
Is I think about it this way, and again I'm going to hurt my argument again.
Good.
By being relatable, and you guys are going to be in the same boat, and I know you are, because I know y'all. There are people in my life. Same for you all, that you love very much.
Yeah.
Where you don't have a problem humbling yourselves for that person.
Sure. Yes.
That and you can rattle. Everyone has that person in their lives, that person or persons, whatever it may be, that they are willing to humble themselves to the point of suffering, a little bit of heartache, a little bit of hardship.
Yep.
But it is for the benefit of that person.
That's right.
We can all relate to that. And then you look at this verse and you see that he humbled himself to the point of death, to the death of the cross.
Yeah.
And that's a
real low.
Us.
Yeah.
He loved us so much that's what he did.
Right.
And again, now I can relate to that and understand that I can put myself lower in my life's totem pole, or whatever we want to say, for that person to boost them up. And I will go, and different people will get different levels of low that I will go to make sure that they succeed or are happy or better off.
You make the sacrifice.
It's whatever it makes. I will humble myself for those people. And for the entire world, Jesus said, as low as I can go, because I love them so much, to lift them up. And I think if you don't talk about the humanity of it and the relatability of being able to self-sacrifice so someone else can get the leg up, because for the simple fact that you love them, I think if you don't talk about that in relation to what Christ did, and then let's think about all the things he went through and all the things he has done, and that level of love, that's why I think you don't do him justice if you don't talk about this.
That's
because of just that picture in and of itself.
If you think about, if the wages of sin is death, and I can't pay your sin debt off because I have my own sin debt, the only person that can pay the sin debt off is somebody that doesn't have a sin debt of their own.
Yep.
But you can't kill God, right?
Nope.
So God places himself in a human experience, and now, oh my goodness, you can kill God.
Yep.
He can experience death, and he does that for you. But you say, well, God can, but he's still God. He can do whatever he wants, and he can have everything he wants because he's God, right? I mean, Jesus can just speak it into existence. No, he limited himself in obedience to the Father, and he obeyed. I don't believe that Jesus knew everything he was going to do. He just obeyed what the Father told him to do.
Yep.
I even like the idea that Jesus did something one day, and he goes, oh, wow, that was really cool. Wow, I just did that. Because he's learning and growing in the human experience, even though he's 100% God, but limits himself, becomes a servant on the human level, just like us, to be relatable. I mean, I think about the time when Jesus says, if there's any way, let this cup pass from me, but not my will, but yours. He didn't want to be crucified. Jesus didn't get what he wanted during that prayer.
No.
So even when we say, hey, he doesn't understand because he can do whatever he wants and have whatever he wants. Well, Jesus didn't.
Yeah.
Jesus said, Father, please let this cup pass from me. And God says, I'm sorry, you can't have what you want on this one.
Again, another relatable thing. I would, if I knew what was coming like that,
you're going to pray the same thing.
Please.
Right. And he still got the answer no. So even on that, he is 100% relatable.
Yep.
But I think the key is Hebrews 4:15 is the take home from this whole episode. Why did God become man? Why the human aspect? Because if we leave out this, we've missed the whole point of the humanity side of God. Why did he have to become man? I mean, he had it all going on. The one thing he was missing, though, is me and you.
Yep.
Yes, he had everything, but he didn't have us, and we were worth everything to him.
Yep.
This whole Christmas season is the beginning of all of this, where he says, hey, I need to be relatable to them so they know that they can come to me and I completely understand.
Yep.
They need to know I'm relatable. He might have known us perfectly, but we didn't know him perfectly.
Yep.
And why would I go to a God that I'm suffering, I'm tempted, and like, yeah, you don't know what it is like to be tempted. Oh no, he was tempted. He was tempted too. So let's look at this verse, Hebrews 4:15. It says, "For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin." Yep. He knows what it's like to be tempted. He knows what it's like to suffer. He knows what it's like to learn and grow. He knows what it's like to even grow physically. He was 100% man. And he humbled himself with a lack of knowledge.
Yep.
And he had to grow in knowledge and wisdom and stature and in obedience, just like we do.
Yep.
But he did it without sin. And he wants us to trust in him. And we can't say, well, you don't understand. He completely understands.
Yep.
Because he got in our shoes.
Yes.
He walked in our shoes.
No, I think it's one of the most awesome things. And you could go on about relatability. We were talking before this episode about you could bring up when he wept at the death of Lazarus. We've all been there. You lose a loved one, you lose a friend.
Yeah.
And there's the verse that we talked about earlier where he increased in wisdom and stature. That's going to be when that took place right after Mary and Joseph lose him in the temple. And he's in there talking, and he's like, "Lady, I got to be about my, I have to be about my father's business." And
right.
Like, hey, tell us where you're at sometime.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's got to grow and learn.
Talk to us.
He's got to grow and learn as a child would with parents and things like that. It's all these things, and I mean, I've been in that boat where it's like, Mom, I'm going to go do this, and it's like, we were worried sick about you. Where were you? And it's like, I was doing this, and I mean, I figured you wouldn't mind. It's okay. I can relate to that. He's hungry when he gets tempted. Hey, make this rocket and bread. He hadn't eaten for 40 days.
That's
and it's
right.
Like, I could get that if I go for 4 hours. We're talking. We may be at critical levels. There's so many things about him and the humanity that is relatable. And I mean, we could go on and on and on about that. Where you can look at his life and be like, okay, yeah, I can understand that one. I can understand that one. But like I said, they have to go, like you talked about in that verse. They go hand in hand.
Yes.
Likewise tempted, yet without sin.
Right.
Because he is
obedient.
100% God.
Yeah.
And he's obedient.
Yes.
And he's perfect and all those things. But he had to go through the human experience just like we did.
Right.
He just came through it on the other side being who he is because he loved us so much and was going to do it.
Yeah.
Because of that relationship. It is the greatest gift when he is born.
Yeah.
It is the greatest gift ever that you could ever receive. But that gift had to grow with time.
It's amazing to think of a God. He's not just a God hovering over us and looking down on us.
Yep.
No, he's a God that's so personal that he became one of us.
Yep.
And that's really hard to fathom, that kind of love, to go to the point of death that he went to. I mean, it wasn't just he died of a heart attack. It wasn't that he fell asleep and didn't wake up. He went through a horrible, horrible sacrifice for us.
Yep.
Because he loved us so much, and the only way he could totally be relatable to us is to say, I've been there.
Yep.
I have been there. And now we realize he's a personal God, and that's an amazing Christmas gift.
Absolutely.
To realize how personal he is. Mm-hmm. So that 100% God, yes, and 100% man. Put it all together, it's still only 100%. It's the character and nature of God in human form, and has to learn just like we do and grow just like we do. So we can say, you know what, we do have a sympathetic high priest who understands us in every way.
So, God is in fact relatable. Make
Yes.
that only 3 times in my life that I have been wrong. So,
wow.
chalk it up and
Add them up with us as the
that's it.
episodes continue.
We'll go from there. And again, you don't have to. It's fine. But no, absolutely, he is
Yeah.
100% relatable by being 100% God and 100% man.
Yes.
In the person of Jesus Christ, which is the greatest gift of all. So again, we want to say thank you all for listening with us. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Again, think on this gift. Just help us share this with whoever we want to share this gift. It is the greatest gift the world has ever received, that we've all personally ever received.
Yes.
It is the greatest gift.
Yeah.
So by any means, we say it at the end of every episode. Share it. Find a way to get it out. Wherever you hear us, keep spreading it. If you have any questions, send it to our email.
Yeah.
And we will try our best to answer it. Though I believe in the next couple episodes to get off of the merry, cheery, happy ending. Let's end with a bombshell, but we have to, so you come back just to add a little
teaser
a
here.
little pizzazz.
Yep. Right.
I need like confetti when I do this, but I think what we need to do is talk about a topic that I believe has come up through several either personal interactions with people or whatnot, and this is one that is hard hitting, needs to be addressed, and hurts a lot of people.
And because it's the Christmas season, a lot of people go through the holidays with this hurt.
Yep.
We want to deal with this hurt now. So
we need to talk about divorce and remarriage and why they may or may not be second-class Christians.
that's right.
Because I think we do need to address that,
Yes,
because
we do.
they seem to be treated that way.
Yep.
And
Let's get it back in
I
context.
think we should get that one back in
That's
context.
right.
So
That's right.
we hope that you'll be joining us for those episodes as we talk about it. That may end up being a long one.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it when we get there, and we'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas, everybody.